Hey there, welcome to episode 39 of Money Never Sleeps, a podcast that looks inside the head of entrepreneurs and at what makes them do what they do. I'm Pete Townsend, your co-host of Money Never Sleeps, along with the fantastic but missing again this week, Owen Fitzgerald. This episode of Money Never Sleeps is kindly sponsored by Ireland's fintech and financial services recruitment specialist, Top Tier Recruitment. If you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, we highly recommend you have a chat with the team at Top Tier Recruitment, as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com and tell them we sent you. Simon Cocking is everywhere on the fintech scene globally, but lives here in sunny Ireland. Owen and I have both gotten to know Simon a little bit over the past 2 years, and I'm very thankful to him for sticking me up on stage at the Irish Tech News FinTech 20 event in 2017 when I was just finding my stage presence. Most of our interaction is via the written word, so it was great to finally have a proper chat with Simon after all this time. And away we go. Here we go again. Welcome to Money Never Sleeps. We're here in WeWork, Dublin Landings, in the offices of our sponsor, Top Tier Recruitment. I'm Pete Townsend, and we're on with Simon Cocking, Senior Editor of Irish Tech News and Editor-in-Chief at Crypto Coin News. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Excellent. Thanks for coming on. Also, Simon, just so you know, Owen's not here. He got called away at the last minute. Things are okay with him, but he just had to go deal with something else. So we have Paul Smith on here from Top Tier Recruitment, our sponsor. Paul stepped in at the last minute to join me for this interview.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks for coming on board, Paul. So, Simon, we all know each other from the tech scene here in Ireland, but your background and your foreground are far more diverse than I could have imagined. So for our listeners, maybe give us your backstory and how you ended up at this point in your life.
Look, I mean, that's a tough question, but I guess the common theme would be communicating and working with people to either tell their story or help them to communicate. And the 20 years in Dublin, or the 20 years in Ireland, I guess, it's been through public art, through environmental education, and then with Irish Tech News for the last, that's been the main focus, has been about communicating the great things that happen in Ireland, and then subsequently we've gone a bit more global, so then just communicating interesting stories. And then, as you mentioned, with the CryptoCoin.news, about 18 months ago, I was asked to go on board to edit that, and it was a steep learning curve, but it was kind of great to learn by commissioning stories as well.
Okay, and you've done so many different things, and you know that with all of the different things that you have listed on your LinkedIn profile, I was thinking that someone said to me a couple of weeks ago that I've hit the record for the most active roles on LinkedIn out of the people that that this guy knows. Clearly doesn't know Simon Cocking. So I think getting into the space where you're just so active out there in the tech scene, particularly around fintech and on the digital asset side of things and in crypto, that you've managed to get yourself up towards some of these top influencer lists and the people that you need to follow on Twitter that are in fintech. So well done there in terms of getting yourself to that point in your profile. But also just the things I noticed, you went to Georgetown University for an exchange program back in the day when it was Alonzo Mourning and Dikembe Mutombo on the basketball team, the Twin Towers.
I mean, let's go Hoyas. I mean, and Dikembe, I came up to his hips, He was a tall guy in the cafeteria.
Yeah, and then with the gardening, the artistry, I see a bit of community building going on there, or a lot of that, as you mentioned. The ultimate Frisbee side, even though I shouldn't be calling it ultimate Frisbee, like my sister who plays ultimate corrected me recently. But you're doing a lot of different things, and that I think there's no point in trying to say that, listen, how does this all fit together? Because it's just Simon, right?
Look, I guess it's nice. I think it's, you follow your interest. Even I guess each of them have had periods. So the art was a period. The environmental education was, and with the ultimate. I came to Ireland. I wanted to continue playing, and unfortunately, in some ways, we had to create the structures and the teams because there was no one around. And yet, I didn't want to be the person doing that for longer than I needed to. So therefore, I did it for as long as I could to try and put other people in those positions so I could walk away and then just go back to being able to just play. And I guess I see that because we have interns now for what we do now. And I guess we're always trying to do this exchange of skills that, we want to help you. Like, obviously you're interning for us, you're helping us, but we want you to walk away and be a better person for having been with us, and also take something on board. So, like you say, there's been a range of interests, but I guess the commonality is take a deep dive. When I came to Ireland, like the idea was to do environmental education, but there was very little budget and very little interest. But there was a lot of funding for public art and community development. So we just started rewriting all our funding applications to match where the money was. And I guess that principle doesn't hurt you in any field.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said it at one point, or I saw in your profile, that you had worked at Ericsson for a while. And tell me about the thought process there of kind of, shedding that corporate life. Was it ever a big part of you, or was it just something else that you were doing that, you substitute other activities for that after a while?
Yeah, look, I mean, so after the community development and all that good stuff, when the recession came, there was less funding. Ericsson were looking to change their culture by bringing in 50 master's graduates every 6 months. So there was a master's program, and they were running it sequentially to fundamentally change the culture by bringing in different people, so that after, I think, 3 years, they envisaged 50-50-50. They envisaged like 300 new people coming in as Java developers and everything. So, I went for it. Like, you had to do an aptitude test, and they wanted to find people that hadn't coded before, but that maybe could pass the skills and mathematical aptitude. And it's a funny one because, like, less so in the States, but in the UK, at 18, you basically decide to do an arts or a science degree. And so you have to kind of almost split yourself. And if we're talking about you've done a lot of different things, it's like, I guess we're all interested in many things, but in England, you have to choose one subject at 18. So I did history. So therefore that pushed me down the arts side. But then come the recession 20 years later, I still always liked maths. And therefore by passing the aptitude, that got me into Ericsson. And you're saying, was it a wrench or was it a change? And I guess I found it very interesting to make the switch from being self-employed, from working for local government, for doing things like that, to go corporate. And I think you have to work with these different beasts to have the ability to then understand the position I'm in now. Like, it's so much better having been in there. At the same time, I had a 2-hour commute each day, and like I said before, I was probably the worst developer they had because I wanted to be a communicator for them rather than a pure Java developer. Like, I have nightmares thinking about Java. I mean, but yeah. I probably still know more Java than 99% of people, but I don't feel happy about that. At the same time, it means that, like, even say as an investor, and like basically with my hat of mentoring businesses, often the guys are super smart, but they get too tech heavy, and they want to stay in the trenches of why they are cracking interesting problems, whereas you need to be able to communicate in a simple way and be on message about why your product is better than others, because otherwise the product that gets traction might not necessarily be your one, but it'll be the one with the guys who took time to communicate as well. So I guess in that way, working for Ericsson was a fantastic experience. At the same time, when they pulled in 10 of the 50 of us and said they were letting us go, I had extremely mixed feelings, because obviously egotistically, we never like to be let go. At the same time, it meant I was freed from a 3-year commitment to do Java.
Okay, I get it. And if you fast forward to today now, and with the time that you have, which is, endless pretty much, right? That between Irish Tech News and Crypto Coin News and then everything else, what is that split of time really that you've managed to achieve?
Yeah, well, I mean, another way to look at that is in the first half of 2018, I was speaking at a lot of events and a lot of conferences, and it always tends to reach the point by about May where, you've ended up being in maybe 20 countries in 4 weeks, and pinging out to Dubai, you're coming back, you're in, you're out, and then you reach the point where you're like, okay, I think I'm good. I think I've got all the value of being out of conferences. So I guess the thing is you filter very hard, and then you filter, does this need a meeting? Do we need coffee? How can I help? What do you really need? And because everybody once your profile goes high, which is nice, but at the same time, it's all kind of noise too. The profile goes higher, many people want to have coffee with you. But sometimes they don't really understand why they want to have coffee with you. They just think that they should. And so you're almost guiding people to work out, can we work together? What is it you want to do? What can I do to help you before we even meet up? Because like you say, if you don't, I guess the goal is like as we become more successful, I think the goal is to not then work 12-hour days, 6 to 7 days a week, because otherwise, I think we're failing in achieving the value of a life work balance if we just keep saying yes to everything. So I know it's a truism to say no a lot, but actually you do that and you do it nicely, or you work out who it's for, and maybe it's not for you, and then you just say no straight away, and then you can have more focus for what's really relevant. So I guess it's an ongoing process, but it's definitely one where there are things that I won't do now that I would have done 6 to 12 months ago, but now I don't feel there's enough value in doing them.
Yeah, and I'm kind of right there with you. And I said a couple episodes ago that 2019 was going to be the year that Pete says no. And I'm already, after saying that last month, finding it hard to do that. In that there is that filter that you apply for things that are so far outside your sweet spot that you just don't take that meeting, right? But then if there's something that's intellectually curious about what that person is doing that wants to have a cup of coffee, you're kind of compelled to do it. How do you say no?
Well, okay, so we left Dublin a few years ago, and I think that really helped because the physical distance meant that you had to kind of process the logistics. And say like Brian Seidman, for example, I've had a similar conversation where before we moved out of Dublin, we spoke to a lot of people I'd seen who had left Dublin, as in the city, the capital. And I'm like, how do you still manage? And they said, well, I filter hard. I work out what's value. If I need to, I'll schedule a day and I'll have 6 meetings in a day with the people that I feel are the highest value. And I did that for a while. And then even I'd assess of those meetings, how many actually led to anything and how many were actually of value. And so, obviously, we do a lot of what I do is to help people raise funds and stuff. So there has to be a clear outcome. But at the same time, sometimes the meetings don't achieve that. And if we flip back to Ericsson, I guess the most liberating thing about becoming self-employed freelance portfolio rather than working for a company is you're no longer obliged to go to a meeting if you don't feel it. And therefore, stripping out 3 to 4 of those half-an-hour meetings, briefings, messages from the CEO that we had at Ericsson, already half my day was gone in things that I feel were not actually the best use of my time.
Yeah, I get that. I was talking to somebody from one of the financial services firms here in Dublin a couple of weeks ago, and he's just looking to reactivate his network that he had kind of left behind for the last 3 years, on the basis that 30% of his time was spent in meetings that he probably could have been doing things better with different folks, right? But because he's part of a big corporate organization with some political inertia and momentum, he kind of needs to go to those things, right? So I'm trying to help him find a way to carve off part of his time to be able to get out there and get these new ideas.
But you know what's really interesting about that, and I saw it in recruitment in particular, where outcomes are very measurable and tangible. I remember one person in particular went from a 5-day week to a compressed 4-day week, and the outcomes were the exact same. But because they had less time to do everything that they were doing in a 5-day week, they just started saying no to a whole load of stuff and just didn't do it.
Yeah.
But the outcomes were exactly the same, if not better.
I know. I take a day a week, and that's a day that I try to focus on doing meetings and just leave it at that. And I find that to work well. But then that does spread out across the rest of the week. But, everything is going swimmingly at this stage. Simon, in terms of your own personality traits that you think have been effective for you in having this portfolio approach to your professional life, what are some of those things?
Yeah, look, I mean, I guess one of them is the one about you always remain polite and you treat people as you'd like to be treated. And so I learned something from friends where they said, when I get potential work, I send them a checklist of questions to see if I want to work with them. And I was at the stage where I was just trying to get any work I could. This is about 6 years ago when I was transitioning. And so I was a little surprised, but then I realized that almost checklist really helps to filter out, are these people that are actually worth working with, or are they going to wreck my head? And, it's that thing about, don't work with arseholes, because if you do, and even back to the environmental education company, if I look back at, it still exists 18 years later, but there were things that we didn't do right, where we hired people that we probably shouldn't have hired and spent too long trying to make them fit. And therefore, I now speak to other people and I say, how fast do you think you should fire? And they said, yeah, look, and so you can now see why people spend longer on really making sure it's the right fit in the first place, because otherwise, it's near impossible. If it doesn't feel right, I doubt it's very rarely going to get better.
Yeah, I know what they say: hire slow and fire fast, right?
I think so. Yeah, and we look back and we keep going. We probably should have fired even faster. Like there hasn't been a time yet where we've regretted it once we've done it. But the first time you agonize about it, and then the second and third time you move faster on it. So then I guess if it's a personality trait, while we've spoken about screening out the meetings, still, even I think even you do this balance between online conversations, messaging. You talk to people to get a sense of them. Even for me, the speed at which they respond is indicative. Like, if you're even at the beginning and they're slow to respond, you're like, well, what are they going to be like to work with if it's taken 2 weeks for them to get back on something that we could have progressed much faster? So I guess it's that thing where that helps me to assess what they might be like. In terms of my own personality, I guess because of the environmental, because of the other stuff, I do try to think about, is this vaporware? Is this something that's actually useful? I mean, and if we talk about fintech, the great thing, like with the unbanked, is potentially some of the innovations in fintech could be transformative and really helpful, like with M-Pesa, to very wide areas of the world that it can make a big difference. So I think it's nice. It doesn't mean that every day we do something amazing to help the planet, but I think it doesn't hurt if you think what you're doing has value to a wider audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I do get that. And that was one of the things that I remember back to my childhood, what you said a couple of minutes ago there about treat others like you would like to be treated. I said that to my daughter recently. And she's like, Daddy, I think I'm learning about that in my first confirmation. I'm like, there you go. Something of value coming out of this, right? So if you look at some of the personality traits that you think might, obviously these are the ones that serve you well, but how about the ones that you're kind of challenging to keep yourself in check, right? To say, oh, I shouldn't have done it that way. And I can kind of think back to what is it inside me that pushed me in one direction and I probably should have gone in another direction. Any of those moments come up for you from time to time?
Yeah, no, look, definitely. I think for one, being English or being American in Ireland already can make us sometimes seem more direct and more blunt than, the culture that we live in. So therefore, I am conscious of that sometimes maybe, my wife will say that you can see on my face sometimes the impatience, So, I'm not quite sure how I managed that one, but I guess maybe if you have the online filtering first, then they can't see me, my impatience. We have two teenage boys, so I guess I say it to them at the same time as we try to follow the one, which is, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by you? And does it need to be said now? And, like often the answer is no to all of those. And therefore, maybe it's just not your time or your place, or you don't need to say it to that person, even though, you think it and you want to say it. Maybe it's just not your gift to say those crappy things to people,
Yep, I get you. And just thinking about your professional portfolio again, and any one particular gig that you're working on right now that has been particularly challenging, and some of the things you might have learned from that.
Well, yeah. Look, I mean, I guess the challenging ones are the ones that either that don't progress, or they don't take the advice that you're giving them, and you can see that they're going to run into rocks, but they feel, I guess, I mean, say with the advising of the initial coin offerings, I've done about 200. So therefore I can cross-reference what I can see will work well or what won't work well quickly. And therefore with some of them, like, I mean, obviously it's their right to push back as well. But if they push back in certain ways or do certain things, then you can see that it is challenging. I guess the fortunate thing with some of these is that if they're too challenging, like we were saying about saying no, then I just say, look, this one's not right for me. And, the other way is that, you always drop your least well-paid work. And there were a couple that I worked with for a couple of years And then eventually I dropped them because they weren't paying as well as the others. And I didn't feel they valued what I was offering. And, within days, I realized it was a really good decision not to work with them because other people valued my time better. And I think it's that thing where if something's too challenging in a way where you don't think it's going to get better and it's not challenging in a constructive way, then like you were saying about saying no, who needs that shit, so it's good to maybe just drop the bad ones.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean by that. I get that. And just thinking about kind of your approach, Simon, there is obviously when you're an advisor, there's just, core mentorship that's in there and trying to understand why someone's going in a certain direction and trying to guide them in a path that, like you said, that you think would be helpful for them. Then there's kind of the technical side, and given that you've done over 200 of these things, you're going to have seen a lot on the technical side that you'd be able to, again, point them in the right direction. And then there's just the strategy side of it, right? And the overall kind of business model approach that different firms take. Out of those three, kind of just the general, arm around the shoulder, mentorship type, the technical side, and then the strategic side, where do you excel?
Yeah, so I guess what I say with each of them, when people sound me out and see if I want to work with them, is that, it's different for each company. So therefore, tell me, I get them to tell me what they're looking for most of. Some of them are super smart, super good on the strategy. There's one, Morpheus Network. They've been invited by the UN to speak about what they're doing with supply side blockchain logistics. I mean, therefore, they're good in that way, but they wanted help in other ways. So I guess, fortunately, it's been different for different ones. And also, though, I guess when it gets, I think with people like us, we kind of have a Rolodex of contacts, so that you're not necessarily promising to be able to fix their Java plugin. But if that's the area they want to go in, then you say, okay, well, here are some people that I think I will introduce you to who can probably help you best. And so a lot of what I do is basically getting to find a way to articulate what the problem is, so I can then work out how I can help them or who might be a good person to put them in touch with. And, so to me, this is the value of being on the influencer lists, because it's then you have a much better ability to reach out to the right people to help the people that you're working with, because once you've been pushed up into that kind of plateau or whatever, those people are more open to a LinkedIn request or a Twitter message, or maybe I've already met them, and then that I guess, so that way you can help people once you know what their problems are. So what do I excel in? I think it's more, trying to help people to understand, to articulate what they need, and then work out how to help them. And equally, I guess, not saying that I have the answers to everything, but working out, like going away and hustling to find out who are the best people, so that, it's like, like sometimes I'd come and ask you something if I feel that, it's more your area than mine.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I kind of tend to do the same thing, where it's like, can you get to the heart of the matter in 45 minutes and figure out if you are going to be able to help them with passion, right? Or if, they're just not at the stage where they need you, right? So, and respecting that, and not going fishing for trying to make a gig out of something that you're not going to be any good at, right? Or that you wouldn't be able to really excel at.
And if we're talking about this is a really good one, which is to say you're too early stage, and like you say, to not look to take on work too eagerly and too soon, because I can now see a lot where I feel that it's barely an idea, and therefore that pushback is really useful for all of us.
Yep, I get you on that.
But I think there's probably a commonality between a lot of what we've talked about in different areas, and it's probably confidence. Because I know when we started the business, it was myself and my wife, so we had no regular income. So you'd say yes to pretty much anything, because you got to pay the bills. But you do get to a stage where you realise that you're not good at certain things, and there's no point wasting time in it, so you start to say no a lot more. But there's also a lot of confidence, I think, that you need in terms of understanding where you can't help, but knowing that you can introduce someone who could.
Yeah.
But it's hard for people, I think particularly entrepreneurs, to kind of let that go and say, I'm not good at this, but I can introduce you to someone else. There's a lot of fear around that.
Absolutely. Just knowing what you're good at and being, it is a confidence thing. Absolutely. What do you think about that, Simon?
Yeah, look, I mean, and I think that's where we get to be in the fortunate position, because we've had this scenario play out, repeated times now. And then also, like, so in 93, 95, we did found a company, and then we did found another one, and then we created other things, and we had some success and some pushback. And it's the thing that I would say maybe 3 out of 10 things cumulatively probably come off. But does that mean you're a failure 70% of the time? Or does that mean that, you see, so sometimes with my mum, she'll say, "What about that thing you did? What happened to that?" And it's like, yeah, that was one in the 70% pile. But you try it, you move on. And I guess that brings confidence if you can recognize that. It's a bit like the baseball, like 300 is a fantastic batting average. So therefore, 3 out of 10 is good.
Absolutely.
If you can recognize that and work out when to say no and when to bin those gigs that are, and also this, and we still find this, the most low paid gigs or the most demanding are usually the biggest, the most needy. They don't really know what they want. They keep changing their mind. And those are the ones to say no to. And like you say, it's to have that confidence to do it. And then I guess also another thing that's really helped, and I've had to advise some people is don't just go for something because of the money too. Yes, don't go for it because of it's low paid, but don't just go for it for a money play as well, because like that can distort you. It can drag you off path as well. You do it because you think it's right and it has potential, because if you do, other people will buy into it, not because you're seeing short-term dollar signs.
I don't think I've ever been in a room where people have nodded so frequently and
I
so
know.
consistently.
We're nodding our heads here, Paul and I, at each other, Simon, on saying no to money, which, I think it's when you release yourself from the corporate salary and the bonus, that it's just, what do you need to do to make ends meet, right? And I've been in positions where the cash flow has been skint, and I have said no to things that just because I knew it wasn't going to be the best use of my time, and I knew that I might be probably more offensive than helpful. So knowing when to say no is a good thing. We heard about your mom a couple of minutes ago, but who do you lean on, to help you to see things straight?
Yeah, look, so my wife is the completely disassociated reality check, because very specifically, for example, yesterday I said I'm going to be writing a crypto novel, and she just looked at me and said, "What? Why? Why would you want to do that?" And I said, "Well, because it's going to be fun." And she said, "Since when is just doing something for fun a good reason to do a business thing?" And I said, "But surely don't you value the fact that I see things completely differently to you?" And she said, "Yeah, but don't you value the fact that sometimes I think some of your ideas are terrible ideas and you need someone to tell you?" So, so she's a ballet teacher. So the great thing is that, I think it's good. And I have mentors too that I talk to, and I'll bounce the idea off them once I've bounced it off people like my wife first, to see if they think it's a completely crazy or bad idea. And so I think it's good to have these people, and also your friends. Maybe I have some long-term friends that are in different sectors but have been entrepreneurs. They're in Miami, Lima, and London, so they know how to talk about firing and flow, but their area is different to mine. And I think it's good to have a couple of people. It doesn't have to be many, maybe 2 or 3, to say, "Look, I'm thinking of doing this. Do you think it's cool?" Or and then I won't necessarily agree with them, but I will at least go away and go, "Why didn't they think it was an amazing idea that I thought it was?"
I get that, absolutely. And I there's this topic I like to refer to as co-mentorship, is that people can mentor each other, and that it doesn't need to be just like I was saying a few minutes ago, an arm around the shoulder. It's that there's a couple of friends out there that I bounce things off of, and they bounce things off of me, and I'd refer to him as a mentor, and he'd refer to me as a mentor. So whatever it takes at this stage. So just to kind of wrap things up, can you tell us one thing that people wouldn't expect to know about Simon Cocking?
Well, you see, you've gone and Googled, so
yeah.
I guess.
Well, LinkedIn gives it all away, man. I mean, it's all in there. So it's like, what else is there besides your life on LinkedIn?
Well, I guess you mentioned the Ultimate Frisbee, and to be honest, I've taken out all the mentions and the references to that, because on one hand, I felt that it might make people not look at me as seriously, and then equally, it was something that I enjoyed doing. But then I decided that I was done and it was time to do other stuff. But so we've been dragged out of retirement like the Expendables, and there's a bunch of us that played 10 to 15 years ago whose age group is, well, one guy's past 60. So, I think that's going to be something that we'll be throwing ourselves around a beach in Wexford at the end of April if we can even walk,
Awesome. I love that. Okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up at this point. So, Simon, thank you so much for joining the show. We really appreciate you coming on board, and best of luck with everything going forward.
Awesome. Thanks a million for having me.
Great.
Good luck, Simon.
Thanks, Simon.
Money never sleeps, pal.
That wraps it up, folks. Thanks to Simon for opening his mind to help us figure out why he does what he does. Remember, if you or a colleague need help attracting and retaining great talent for your fintech or financial services company, get in touch with the team at Top Tier Recruitment, as they really know their stuff. You can find them at toptierrecruitment.com. As for Simon, you can find out more about him by following him on Twitter at Simon Cocking, Cocking. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to Money Never Sleeps on iTunes and leave us a 5-star review. You can also subscribe via our website to channels like Spotify and Stitcher, so just go to the subscribe page on moneyneversleeps.ie and follow the links. If you're searching directly on iTunes or Spotify, Money Never Sleeps is spelled as all one word. For more info and links, check out the show notes on moneyneversleeps.ie. You can drop us a line on info@moneyneversleeps.ie or at MNS Show on Twitter. As for me, I increase the odds of startup success. DM me on Twitter at Pete Townsend NV if you want to know more. You can follow Owen on Twitter at Owen Fitzgerald9. Finally, thanks to Conan Brophy from Create Sound for recording and editing this podcast. Till next time, thanks for listening. See ya.